Grimtools community and YouTube, welcome on guys. Welcome in to my Vitality Caster guide. This guide will actually focus on one build for the three classes Conjurer, Cabalist and Ritualist, with a little bit of extra emphasis on the Conjurer class, since I did also do a full solo self-found fresh start playthrough on that one, for which you can find a link to the playlist down below in the description of this video. Now, why would you want to start this game with a Vitality Caster? Reason number one: while it's not the fastest build in general, it is the perfect, like, from zero to hero build, so it is a very solid and steady build throughout all phases of the game, even for the very end game. Now, why is that? First of all, because Vitality damage has lots of leech, so you don't need like any fancy gear to heal yourself when most of your sustainers are like built into your kit, like into your skills, right? It is also very easy to kite with most of the Vitality damage skills, since like all of them are basically cooldown based. And also number 4 is it is also easy to face tag actually, like once you have enough leech together, right? Because like all the abilities have so much leech that you don't even have to kite that much. You can just face tank most content later on, especially like once you have acquired like the easier to farm gear, which is, well, mostly actually Targetfarmable. And that's also reason number 5 here why you should play a build like this, because there are a ton of easy to get and Targetfarmable items, like for example the bone spikes and vampiric bone walls, all the way to the dark one set for endgame, which is viable for pretty much all endgame content, no matter how hard it is. And last but not least, I mean, this is not a soldier, and while soldiers are very good for beginners in general, this is something different, so that's like another reason to play this, just to like not play a soldier, right, as a beginner. All 3 of these classes will basically be able to crush all content, including endgame content, like also celestial bosses, right, if you have like the correct setups for endgame, for which I'm gonna like show you some at the end of this video, and also there's gonna be like links down below in the description of this video again, like always. There's gonna be timestamps, so like feel free to just go and watch the parts of the video that you would like to see for your class that you wanna play, right? Feel free to like check out all the Grimtools links down below. Remember that in Grimtools you can click on the book on the bottom left and then like see the skills, and also you can click on the devotions to like see all the devotions as well. You can also press S to open up the skill book, or press D to open up the devotion page. With all of that said, I'm just gonna give you like one general rule for pretty much any build in general, right? Early game you want to ideally like per level try to like put 1 point to your mastery bar, right? Put 1 point to a skill of your choosing. Like ideally you wanna like max out your main damage ability first, at least your early game main damage ability, and then the 3rd point can go either into the skill or into the mastery bar, depending on like which one you rather wanna push more. So actually I won't really like talk that much about the very early levels here, but instead I'm gonna talk about how to defeat the Warden Krieg at level 10, and then from then on I'm gonna like give you a proper skill point allocation for like the following levels after like level 10. On top of that, remember that in this game, respecking is very easy, right? You can go to the spirit guide and try to respec like all the skill points, all the attribute points, and all the devotion points. Well, attribute points you can actually not respec in the spirit guide, but rather need like a pot, which we will get later. So like early on, don't worry like that much about attribute respecking anyway. And to be honest, I mean, when it comes to like putting points into attributes, right, in general, try to follow, for this build as well, the generic rule of like putting all points to physique, unless you need points to cunning and spirit to equip your gear. And if you like somehow fucked up attributes, it doesn't really matter that much, you can respec them later on anyway. And compared to skills and like devotion points, attribute points are like not that important anyway, to be honest. You triumphed. So early game, if you would like to complete the challenge of killing Warden Krieg before level 11 on veteran difficulty as well, you should be using one of the following skills: Devouring Swarm, maxed out, and 1 point down here to Mogdrogen's Pact, as well as 10 points down the Master Bar if you're playing Shaman. Maxed out Summon Familiar, the Raven, and 1 point into its Mend Flesh ability, and then 10 points down here to the Master Bar if you want to start out with the Occultist. And if you're playing a Necromancer, you wanna first of all max out the Skeletons, and also like get one more skeleton here. But then, once you are like at Warden Krieg, like the second you are at Warden Krieg, you want to go back and respec, like go to the Spirit Guide, right, take out all the points from the Skeletons, and then put as many points as you can into the Blind Fiend, which should be around like 13 or 12, depending on like if you did the 8th quest with Casper up as well. And with this Blind Fiend, you're gonna be able to like kill Warden Krieg. The skeletons are gonna be way too squishy and will just die against Warden, Krieg and Veteran. On top of that, if you're playing the Occultist or the Necromancer, you're basically playing a pet build, so make sure to get Carver's Conjuring Bone and also a Searing Ember component into that, to then be also able to, well, spam Fire Blasts on top. This Carver's Conjuring Bone is also very helpful if you're playing Devouring Swarm with a Shaman, because not only does it give you lots of energy regen, which is good for Devouring Swarm, but also it does spawn the Reckless Guardian, which is another pet, which is like good for, well, any kind of build early game, honestly, because this pet also has a Frenzied Roar ability, which gives you more total speed and also heals you as well as your allies. On top of that, you can also always get the Slith Primer Ring from the guy that requires you to, well, bring him the Slith Necklaces. Really good early game ring as well. And then you can also always get Ice Axe Spoilers, which usually also will give you like an affix on top. Up to the hidden like Ice Axe stash behind the trunk in the Foggy Bag. For a weapon, I mean, honestly, like, use whatever you find. Since you do want to use the Conjuring Bone, however, make sure that it's only a one-handed weapon, and I mean, a guaranteed one-handed weapon would be the Augments Axe that you also get like in one of the first houses around Lower Crossing. Nowadays, however, there are some more monster frequents in the game, even in Act 1, right? For example, like Barrock's Bloody Arm, which you can get from killing Barrock, the very first like mini-boss under the tree. Right, this one has like additional bleeding damage, which is pretty nice for like Devouring Swarm kind of Shaman as well. For attributes this early, you can do like a healthy mix of Physique and Spirit. Spirit actually does help you out with energy regen, so that would be pretty nice on the Shaman. The other two, Occultist and Necromancer, don't really need the Spirit as badly as the Shaman. You can just also like go into full Physique here. The only thing that you're gonna spam here are the Fire Blasts, right, from the Searing Ember component. Or also, instead of the Searing Ember, you could also use the Chilled Steel component, right, which gives you the Ice Spike, and then you could also like use the Ice Spike instead of the Fire Blast, which is also like okay to use against like the burning zombies, right, because they're kind of immune to fire. But overall, I would say that the Fire Blast is gonna be better at killing Krieg himself. Also, don't forget to put components onto basically all of your gear slots. Early game, Polished Emerald is like basically all you need, right? Before level 10, there aren't really that many components that you can choose from, besides like the Searing Ember, Chilled Steel here, and then like the Polished Emeralds like into your rings and helmet, and I think also like enchants as well. So, I mean, for like killing Warden Krieg, it shouldn't matter that much. Also remember that you have to kill Warden Krieg on Veteran to get the achievement, but you can still run up to the very last Rift Gate before Warden Krieg in normal. And then once you have arrived at that one and you feel like you're strong enough to kill Warden Krieg, you can just like switch over to Veteran and then kill him on Veteran. Now you did also see me pick up a couple of these Devotion Shrines. You can get 6 easily while doing the Warden challenge, and in total you will get 7 in Act 1. Now with these 6 to 7 points you want to get to the Jackal Devotion first, complete that one, and then start working on the Bat Devotion. Now after defeating Warden Krieg, if you haven't done all the side quests in Act 1 yet, because you did rush Warden Krieg at level 10, then you should first of all like do all the side quests here, and after doing all the side quests in Act 1 and also like defeating Warden Krieg, you wanna go to Act 7 real quick. So you speak to the emissary that's waiting for you on the way to the bridge to the left, and you go through the portal and you go to the Forgotten Gods area. Here you only do the very first quest where you have to like defeat the trial, and then you choose a faction of your choosing, Krieg, Solar or Bismiel. Choose the one whose movement ability you want, right? All 3 faction vendors can say you like 2 different rune augments, which are movement abilities, so read through them carefully and then like choose the one that you would like to play. After choosing your faction here and buying a couple of these rune augments, you can like put these freely onto your medal once you have a medal, and make sure to have like a couple of them with you, because you have to like reapply the rune augment each time you switch around your medal, or each time you like take out your component out of your medal as well. Starting at level 10, you can potentially already choose your second mastery. You don't have to though, and in many cases it is actually better to like choose a second mastery like later at level 20 or 30, something like that. If you however have started out with a shaman, then would certainly recommend you to like spec into Occultist or Necromancer, depending on like which secondary you want to play, rather soon after like level 10, because Shaman really only is like really good early game for Vitality at least, and unless you're playing Promise Strike Lightning, then Vitality Shaman is a little bit not that great, I would say between like level 15 and like 25 to 30. I would rather suggest you to go for either Occultist, Bloody Pox, or Necromancer's Ravenous Earth after using the Devouring Swarm. From now on I won't talk about these like single monsters anymore. From now on I will only talk about the 3 classes Conjurer, which is Shaman Occultist, Cabalist, which is Occultist Necromancer, and Ritualist, which is Shaman Necromancer. Also up to around level 25 to 30, up to until you get to the Mountain Deeps. There aren't really any items supporting these classes that well, so we're just like purely going off skill points and devotion points here. If you want to play a Shaman Occultist or a Occultist Shaman, doesn't matter like which one you start out here at, you should start speccing into Bloody Pox. This is a level like around level 25 example here, so you can see that this was the Shaman starter, right? We had the 16 points here, the 1 point here, the 10 points down here, and basically after that, just like make sure to like start putting points into Occultist, and then get the Bloody Pox ability, as well as the Wasting ability, and then also if you, well, want a quicker leveling experience, especially like when you're playing softcore. If you're playing hardcore, I think Fevered Rage is also fine early game. However, it gets a little bit sketchier because it does like increase enemy total speed and offensive ability. However, they get way more like vulnerable to your attacks. So even for hardcore, I think this is generally worth it. But yeah, if you're like a completely fresh new player, then maybe start playing Bloody Pox without Fevered Rage. Bloody Pox will give you like lots of additional like AoE, and your single target damage is kind of not gonna be that good at this point. That's why you mostly want to like get the Fevered Rage to just like multiply your damage on enemies, right? If you're playing like this, also I would recommend you to not play on Veteran, just play on normal difficulty, especially if you're a new player, right? You just switched over to Veteran to kill Warden, Krieg on Veteran, and after that you go back to normal difficulty again. And overall, the Veteran difficulty is also not really worth for leveling. It's kind of like just slowing you down overall. If you did start out with the Occultist, however, you could also just like keep playing the Raven for a little bit longer for like single target damage, but also like use Bloody Pox on top with Wasting, and you don't really have to like pick Shaman if you want to like pick Shaman as a secondary yet. You can like just be fine with like playing Occultist a little bit longer. So at around level 25 in the end, how would these skill allocations look like, right? For a Conjurer, you want the Bloody Pox and the Wasting maxed, as well as the Fevered Raged, as well as the Devouring Swarm. However, if you are a Shaman or an Occultist and you want to also play Necromancer, or if you have also started like leveling with a Necromancer, then I would 100% recommend you to start going for Ravenous Earth. Ravenous Earth is an ability over here in the Necromancer tree, right at 15 points. Just get to 15 points, max it out, and you can also like get there quicker in the Occultist tree. For example, if you just like remove the Raven to like a 1 point, I mean to like the Raven skill alone, and like just retake all these points from the Spirit Guide, right? And then you reach Ravenous Earth like a lot quicker, and you can also max out the Decay, the secondary ability here of Ravenous Earth. Like Ravenous Earth and Decay are really good both for like single target damage as well as AoE damage. Ravenous Earth has 6 to 8 fragments, right, if you max it out. And all these fragments can actually also shotgun, at least the flat damage of this can shotgun, so like the flat vitality damage of this can shotgun. I mean, just like looking at the skill, you might think this deals more poison damage and vitality. It does not. The poison damage only gets like applied once per fragment. The vitality damage gets applied from all different fragments together. So yeah, I mean the poison damage only gets like applied once for all fragments, and like it only gets refreshed by different fragments. So all we really have here is like 135 poison damage per second, as well as 109 vitality damage times 6 to 8, depending on like how many fragments this one spawned, and also like with how many fragments the enemies got hit here. Ritualist, in my opinion, should look at something like this, right? You have the max out Ravenous Earth as well as the Decay, 16 points in Devouring Swarm, just like with 1 point investment down here. And from now on, how you scale these 3 classes is gonna depend a little bit on like which kind of items you find. There are a couple of very interesting monster frequents that you can get down in the cave in the mountain deeps near the Deadman's Gulch Rift, right? This is basically already Act 3, so like up to Act 2, up to the end of Act 2, you will have to like somehow like deal with just these abilities here. You won't really have like any good gear, you won't really have like any good like plus skills. You just like use whatever you find, right? You look for vitality damage, as well as like resistances, especially resistances are really important in Grim Dawn. Now what you can do after level 25, moving on forward, right, you can put 1 point in Spectral Binding and also like start maxing out Spectral Wrath, as well as getting like 1 point into Call of the Grave if you are playing a Necromancer. Right? If you're playing the Conjurer and you already have your Bloody Pox as well as your Devouring Swarm at like 1 point in Mugdong's Pact, then you can start moving on to putting points to the Sigil, right? Or like putting points down here as well is fine as well. Also Curse of Reality as well as Vulnerability are pretty good overall, and also like Blood of Krieg as well as the aspect of the Guardian is pretty good. But like these I would rather get a little bit later. So what you want to get first is you want to like start putting points at the Sigil, because very soon you're gonna get like a shield in Dead Man's Gulch, which is gonna make your Sigil like insane. Also when it comes to the devotions, you want to make sure to get to the Wendigo and the Revenant. These are like the tier 2 devotions that you should aim for next year, right? The tier 3 devotion that you should like aim for ultimately is the Ritosh devotion. This is like really strong as well. However, until we like get there, and also to Dying God even after that, we will have to like aim for Revenant and Wendigo first. So the Wendigo will need 4 red and 6 blue, while the Revenant only needs 8 red. So how do we get there kind of easily? We can just like max out the jacket that we had earlier, right? Then you want to get the point at the blue crossroads next, and then we could for example get the Satyr's Guide devotion for big movement speed over here, as well as like physical, cold, light and resistance down here. And with this point on crossroads you will have access to the Wendigo, and then after the Wendigo you would then just take the Revenant. Also keep in mind that you can always retrieve the green down here, right, because you don't need it after getting bad, and also you can like retrieve the red in crossroads here and the blue in crossroads here after completing the Revenant devotion. Now you want to put these to some abilities that you're using as well, like the Devouring Swarm here, I don't know, maybe you're even still using the Fireball, right? If you're playing a Occultist, like put these to like Bloody Pox for example, or maybe Curse of Reality is something that you will use later on as well. These devotions at, what is this, 24 devotion points is something you would probably have around level 40ish. So these skills for which you want to get your items from now on are Bloody Pox, Sigil of Consumption, as well as Necromancer's Ravenous Earth. You can check out all the monster icons that exist in the game in Grimtools here on this page when you click on the item database over here and then click on item skill modifiers. You also want to look out for items that are supporting vitality damage, right? So for Bloody Pox you have the Bone Blade, which will drop in the Mountain Deeps. This can drop as early as level 20 already actually, but you're probably gonna be like around 30-ish when you go to the Mountain Deeps in my opinion. And then also you can get the Medal of Blood Feast in Tyrant's Hold, which is the fort over here near the Pine Barrens Rift. So like you need to actually like blow up the detonation site over here with dynamite first. After getting to Prospector's Trail, right, you get over here, blow this up, and then you go to Pine Barrens. And then you like complete the entire quest line here in Pine Barrens, right, basically with these death marked guys. And then inside the Tyrant's Hold, you will be able to find Blood Feast and kill Blood Feast, and if you're lucky you also get his monster Infrequent, which does support Bloody Pox very well. For the Sigil of Consumption you can get the Vampiric Bone Wall, also down in the Mountain Deeps from these trogs. And then very much later on you can also get the Rhylock Mark, but this is gonna be like dropping from the Rhylocks and Oppressors and so on in Act 6 actually, so like and the Chaos Rift between Barrowholm and the Lone Watch Rift, as well as the Chaos Rift in here in the Morndale, right, the Cinder Wastes. Here you can also find, for example, the boss called Gabalthun, right, which has a pretty good drop rate of dropping that medal, but that's something you will do like probably way later, like after level 40ish, like when you have to like defeat Logorian, like get through the entirety of Act 5 before like even getting here. So this is something you should do like around level 50ish probably. For Ravenous Earth you have the Bone Spikes, which again drop in the Mountain Deeps. So I mean you can already tell that like generally the Mountain Deeps are really insane for like any kind of vitality caster, right? You have the Bone Spike, the Vampiric Bone Wall, as well as the Bone Blade that support especially Occultist and or Necromancer very well. After the Bone Spikes for a Ravenous Earth character you can also get the Basilisk Crest in Act 5, right? This one does reduce the cooldown to Ravenous Earth even more, so making you able to like spawn out more of those like fragment spitting shitholes, right? As well as in Act 7 you can get the Magi Visage from the Magi's inside the Tomb of the Heretic dungeon, where you're not gonna get that early on either, but these have like some additional like vitality damage to Ravenous Earth, as well as acid to vitality conversion to Ravenous Earth. Really good as well. If you decide to play around Ravenous Earth rather than like Bloody Pox or Sigils of Consumption, then you can certainly consider going into the Forgotten Gods Act a little bit earlier, probably after getting the items like the bone spikes in Act 3, like in the Mountain Deeps. Basically after getting to, say, around Homestead, right, you could like make it to Homestead, and then after Homestead, just stop doing progression in Act 3 and instead go into Act 7 and basically do the entirety of the Forgotten Gods Act, because you will kind of like have to do the entire Forgotten Gods Act to like get into the Tomb of the Heretic dungeon, because you need the 3 Seals of Morganath to enter this dungeon in the first place, and then you can like farm the Magic Visage there as well. You're probably gonna be like around level 40, and also if you don't want to like kind of like break your flow with the game, like just continue on to Act 4, maybe like doing 5 and 6 on top, right, and then go here later. Like, doesn't really matter that much if you get this one this early or not. Just make sure to get this one before you move over into higher difficulties. So when it comes to an example level 40 Conjurer, right, and also all the gear for it, let's hover over all of this real quick. Also, first of all, remember to put your Grimtools here to normal difficulty, right, otherwise it will look like it's actually scuffed, even though it's not really that scuffed. Okay, so we got a Bone Blade here, right? Notice that also like all of these monster frequents, like the Bone Blade, the Vampiric Bone, etc., that I put here in this link will have no affixes. In-game, you will have, of course, affixes on all of these. Preferably, you should either look for Vitality Damage affixes or Resistance affixes on top. But you can already see that even without any affixes, this is already very much playable. And of course, in-game it's gonna look way better because of affixes. So, Bone Blade, right? We have a Bone Blade on Conjurer because of Vitality Damage and Vitality Resistance reduction to Bloody Pox. We got this from the Mountain Deeps at level 20 or 35. Doesn't really matter which one you get. The things that matter are that you have one and that you have these like modifiers to Bloody Pox. Then we got the Vampiric Bone Wall. This one actually also got buffed in the last patch. This one also has like additional CDR to Sigil of Consumption now, also 5-second duration to Sigil, and more lasted to Sigil, just insanely strong for the Sigil of Consumption. Then I do have a Putrid Necklace. This is a +1 all skills to Occultist amulet, which you can get in Act 1 actually. You go down to the second cavern behind the Foggy Bank Rift, and down here you will find Primordian, the Forgotten One, and this guy is the only enemy in the game to drop the Putrid Necklace. You can see that I've like put this to level, I don't know, way too high, right? Let's say he's level 20, something like that, then he will like drop a level 8 necklace here. If he's like level 30 and higher, he will drop like a level 32 necklace as well. It really doesn't matter that much if you get level 8 or level 32 necklace here. What matters is that you get one, and this will give you +1 all skills to Occultist, and also like more duration to Bloodreek, and then you have Elemental and Aether to Acid conversion to Bloodreek. This also doesn't really matter that much, because like you're not scaling Acid that much either. I mean, generally you are scaling Acid a little bit more on the side than Elemental and Aether, at least. But yeah, like it doesn't really matter if you're playing Vitality. But you want this for +1 all skills to Occultist, and some like more crit damage and like duration to Bloodreek. This crit damage is gonna be global, so like as long as you have Bloodreek active, you will have 10% more like global crit damage on all your abilities. Then we also have the Blood Feast mark. The Blood Feast mark, as I said earlier, like drops from the guy in Tyrant Soul Red. And then we also got a Rovari cord. This one is a +1 all skills to Occultist, like craftable belt. All of the factions generally have craftable like belts, like you can buy a blueprint from the factions, and there is gonna be basically one for almost every class at around level 35, and in this case, for example, also for Occultist. Then we got the Bone Talisman. You can get this one from the Rovari quest in the Akovian Foothills, right? If you lie to the elders, you keep the relic for yourself and you will get the Bone Talisman relic. Everything else here are basically either additional quest items like the Skinner family seal. After you like save Skinner and his family, right, you will be rewarded with the family seal by the Skinner. And other than that, these are only faction items, right? It's like a faction Devil's Headguard here, faction Devil's Shoulder Guard, faction Rovari gauntlets, faction Rovari vestments, faction Harvest Greaves from the Homestead faction. I mean, generally you can obviously like use whatever you find instead here. You will notice that most of these are just there to like give you resistances. They're not really there for like damage at all. So like use whatever you find instead of this. Also put leg plates of valor here. These are obviously a random drop. However, they are blue items. Like this is a blue item, so it's not that hard to get it. On the other hand, I just wanted to like show you this one here because it's basically like the best pair of blue pants that you can get in the entire game at around level 40. Very, very defensive as well. However, if you get something else, like some other green pants with like good affixes, that would be totally fine as well. When it comes to the components, we have like Scaled Hide, Silk Smudge, Unholy Inscription, Mark of the Traveler, Antivenom Salvi, right, Hallowed Ground, Purified Salt, Imbued Silver, which have like auras as well. These two, you need to like activate those, right? I mean, all of these are either easy to find and or very, very easy to craft at the smith, right? They should all be like baseline blueprints that you can just like easily craft. The only exception is Runestone. I think Runestone is a faction blueprint, but also very, very easy to get, just like the Aether Soul as well. Then also we have Soul Shards, which are like easily to get as well. Like these are just drops as well that you get from, I think, mostly the skeletons around Act 2, and they are just like perfect for pretty much any Vitality character, and also in general are really, really good because of 20% Vitality resistance. Right, these are really, really good. So overall, I mean, I won't really talk about components more in this guide because I do have a component guide in YouTube as well. So if you would like to get a more like in-depth guide around like components in general, then check out that guide, please. On the Conjurer at around level 40, we only use Shaman as a support, right? Literally just the Warring Swarm and that's it. And in the Occultist tree we have Bloody Pox wasting 1 point of Black Death to like make wasting last longer, and like Fevered Rage also to like increase the potency of the entire Bloody Pox line by quite a bit. Also we have maxed out Sigil of Consumption because of the shield, and 1 point of Destruction just to like get some additional like percent vitality damage here. The Fire and Chaos damage we don't convert yet, but we will later. Also we got Possession, the exclusive skill here for like damage absorption, chaos resistance, as well as vitality, like percent vitality damage. On top of that, you always want to use Blood of Krieg. The first note here is not that amazing. I mean, it's also really amazing, but I would say the second note is actually more important to get earlier, right? Because this will basically just fix all of your physical resistance and poison resistance. So you don't really need to like get any poison resistance anywhere else but on this ability. Which of course means that the anti-venom sword that we have put here earlier actually is kind of useless now. You can just put something else here. Actually, this doesn't really make that much sense, to be honest. Now for the Cabalist and the Ritualist, I'm not gonna like talk about everything as much in detail anymore. If you like have missed me talking about the faction items, etc., like just check out the Conjurer that was before this one, right? So the Cabalist has which kind of different items here. Cabalist has also a Bone Spike instead of the Bone Blade, right? Because we're more focusing on Ravenous Earth and actually not at Bloody Pox at all here anymore. This does also mean that you don't have to like play around with Rage. Overall, probably like making this a little bit more maybe like beginner friendly in this current state, and also like a little less sweaty to play, right? Because you're rather gonna try to focus on Ravenous Earth and Decay a little bit more. We got the Spectral Wrath here as well. You see, we like play Sigil still on top for last year, right? And we have the Blood of Krieg like 1 point here, and then like 8 points here for like physical and poison resistance. On the offhand, we're still using the Vampiric Bone Wall, right, for the Sigil buff, and I mean, you don't need the Bloody Pox metal here, so you can like use whatever metal you find. For example, the Brawler's Distinction that you get in the like pit in the older Covia. More important here though is that you will have to side with Death's Vigil, right, because you're a Necromancer. And they have a pretty decent like helmet as well that you can use here. And also you want to get the Deathwatcher Pendant as well. However, Deathwatcher Pendant is not something that you can buy from the Death's Vigil, right? Usually you get this as a drop from like killing Vigil, but how do you get this? Well, if you're sided with them, right? You can't kill them if you're sided with them. Where there's one way to get this, and that is over here in the Blood Grove, right? In the Blood Grove, you can go to this portal, right? And then go over here, go down here, and then you can like actually go through the river, just like a secret way here, through the river, over here to Benevald. And Benevald is a merchant which sells like quite some unique items, and he can also sell you items from both the Commons Chosen as well as the Death's Vigil faction, which otherwise are only drops. So you can actually buy the Deathwatcher Pendant from Benevald, and that's how you get this really nice pendant, which gives you like another +1 Necromancer, as well as duration and health restored to Call of the Grave, which is why you always want to like 1 point at least Call of the Grave, and kind of like treat this as a, well, secondary Blood of Krieg, like a healing as an ability as well, right? Which also on top of that gives you like more vitality damage and crit damage during its uptime. Now for the Ritualist, you again wanna use bone spikes just like on the Cabalist. However, you wanna focus even more on these bone spikes now, because you don't have the sigil of consumption anymore, right? You can't abuse sigils with the shield. So, and honestly on the other hand, like Shaman is still kind of bad at this stage of the game, like you only have Devouring Swarm. The other abilities here aren't really worth investing into compared to Necromancer skills. Like we got the Spectral Wrath here, we got the 1-point Call of the Grave, again because of the Amulet, the Death Watcher Pendant which you get from Benevolt, the Secret Shopkeeper and the Belt Grove, right? And then we just go for Harbinger of Souls as well as our exclusive skill here to like boost Vitality damage even further, right? Ravenous Earth and Decay is like the main dodge here, and then we have Devouring Swarm as a supportive ability. Now, how do you even wield two of these like bone spikes, right? You can get the Bladesworn Talisman very early as well. This is basically a blueprint from Devil's Crossing. Like once you have done some of the quests with them, right, you can, let's put this to normal. You can buy the Bladesworn Talisman blueprint and then craft it, and then you can dual wield on pretty much any class, which allows you in this case also to wield 2 bone spikes. Later on you want to also get the medal from Act 5, right, the Basilisk Crest. You get this Basilisk Crest by defeating basilisks around the Agdenborg, and this is a really good medal as well for Ravenous Earth. You probably won't have it by level 40, but up to like level 50 maybe you should try to like get this Basilisk Crest as well. It doesn't have any Vitality Dodge, however you might get some Vitality Dodge on affixes or like some resistances on affixes, right? But the cooldown reduction alone and also like skill energy cost reduction alone are gonna make this item like very strong and very much worth it to use alongside Ravenous Earth and the 2 bone spikes. Now when it comes to a belt for a Ritualist, you obviously don't want to use a Robber Cord on a Ritualist, right, because this is +1 Occultist, and Necromancer +1 skills would be really good, right? However, Necromancer, just like Inquisitor, does not have a level 35 faction belt, right? You cannot get a +1 all skills belt from a faction for the Necromancer or the Inquisitor class. Unfortunately, there's no such thing. So what you can do is either use like the Shaman belt, right, the Solar belt which you get from Homestead, or just use like whatever belt you can get basically, right? This doesn't really matter that much that you don't get a belt here for +1 Necromancer this early, because I mean you're gonna be strong enough with the bone spikes anyway. When it comes to attributes on all of these classes, you basically, after maybe like the initial some points of spirit that you have spent on the spirit, you just want to like go all physique, basically all the way to 100. From now on you just want to like spend all the points in physique, and that's it. Keep in mind, however, that you might need to put some cunning in between to like wield higher versions of bone spikes or even bone blades, right? These do require quite some cunning. So you might want to need like some more cunning for this. Also, if you can, try to get more stun resistance on pretty much any of the affixes or like faction items as well. 0% stun can actually kind of work on a Vitality caster like this, because you have lots of healing even though you're stunned, right? You have lots of healing on, say, the Bad Devotion, on Devouring Swarm, on Sigil of Consumption, right? So you have lots of like passive healing even while stunned, but generally try to get also obviously more stun resistance. It is pretty important. Now these level 40 setups should honestly be basically strong enough to carry you through the entirety of normal. You can basically like run something like this all the way to the end of normal, so like until level 70-ish you should be able to be like totally fine using these kind of setups. There aren't really like that many more upgrades you can get here. There would be just the Rylock Mark upgrade, especially for Conjurers and also like Cabalists, to like make your Sigil stronger instead of your Bloody Pox, as well as the Gargoyle Visage from the Forgotten Gods areas, and the Ascendant Source from the Ascendant Mages around the City of Mammoth, as well as later on the Magi's Visage for more power to Ravenous Earth. Now for the skill point allocation for a Conjurer until level 40 and 60, you can see that we obviously like still don't really have like any points of Shaman, so we want to start using points for Shaman. Before we do actually put points of Shaman, however, we want to max out the aspect of the Guardian first. This is gonna like take care of poison resistance completely, and yeah, physical resistance is pretty nice here as well. You can also kind of like pull points from the like baseline of Bloody Pox now as well. Wasting does scale better than Bloody Pox anyways, and you will have like lots of single target as well as AoE damage on Sigil of Consumption once you have this maxed out, as well as your shield. Anyway, so like the Bloody Pox itself, the skill, doesn't really like scale that well, as you can see, so you could also like put out the points here, but you don't have to. Like, it's still okay to like have some points here. Other than that, you could also like put some points here into Blood Krieg. You don't have to like really max this out this early, but it's not like bad to put some points here either. I would put like between level 40 and 60, try to like put 1 or 2 points here every level, and also like try to like put 1 or 2 points down into the Mastery Bar of Shaman as well per level. So eventually you want to get to like a maxed out Blood Krieg, you want to get to Heart of the Wild, as well as, more importantly actually, you want to get to Oak Skin. Oak Skin, why is Oak Skin so important? Oak Skin is kind of similar to Aspect of the Guardian actually. Like, this one gives you physical and poison resistance, right? Whereas Oak Skin gives you armor, pierce rest, and aether rest. So it's like another skill, or like rather toggle aura that does help you out with like maxing out your resistances. And resistances are again super important, so Oak Skin is very good. Heart of the Wild is also a very good ability in general, but because of its like percent HP scaling nature, it is better later than now. Also, ideally try to get plus skills to your sigil. I did have actually 22 points on sigil here at level 60 on my playthrough, because of mostly plus skills on the suffix called Offhungering Rifts. Offhungering Rifts is a suffix that you can get on any green item, and it is pretty insane for like any kind of sigil character as well. For attributes, I'm still basically putting all the points in physique. Alright, yeah, I mean, this guy on normal is not too hard. Also, don't get you baited by this, like, don't walk here, like, there's nothing there. This is like just another way to how to lose your hardcore character, right? There's nothing here. On a Cabalist, you wanna as well do the same thing here with the Aspect of the Guardian. Also, on a Cabalist, you didn't get to Possession yet, right? Because you did want to like get that Decay and Cover the Grave and Ravenous Earth and Necromancer first. So, well, what you do now though, you wanna start pumping points into Occultist and get that Possession. Right, Possession is really good because of damage absorption, Chaos Rust, Skill Disruption, percent vitality damage. Really good ability overall. Also keep in mind that you don't really have to overcap your Aspect of Guardian. 12 points is usually enough. You don't have to like put this above 12 pretty much ever. For endgame, you can do it at some point, but yeah, for now, just like keep this at 12 points. Also again, max out Blood Krieg as well. And once you have out the maxed out Blood Krieg as well as the Sigil, as well as soft capped Aspect of the Guardian, as well as Possession, you can then like start putting points into Vulnerability, because of your ultimate, and like start working on this next and like max it out in the next couple of levels until like 60, 65, something like that, right? On the Ritualist, this is where we left off at level 40, right? We had the Harbinger of Souls, as well as Fall Eruption, Decay, Ravenous Earth, etc. Necromancer tree is basically already done for now. We can start working on the Shaman here, and we do only have the Boring Swarm there right now, right? So similar to the Conjurer, you wanna like start putting points down here into the Magdogan's Pact line, get like 1 pointers into these first nodes, and then like basically max out the Oak Skin for that Pierce and Aether resistance, as well as the armor. Really good ability. But we do have some more ability points left here, so what you can do with those is we can start putting points into the Shaman Mastery Bar even further to start working towards Blood Pact of the Wendigo Totem. Like, the totems of Shaman are pretty good, like both the Storm Totem as well as the Wendigo Totem are pretty good, and together with Corrupted Storm, which will like convert all the lightning damage to vitality damage on the totem, really good for a vitality caster, obviously, right? However, the Wendigo Totem alone, it's not really like that good on its own, at least not for a build like this, and also like not at this stage of the game. So you wanna just like pump your mastery points first to get to like 40 points basic in Shaman, and that's already like where you're gonna be at around level 60, right? And then after that you will start like putting points in the totem here, like this totem, and max this out, right? And also like get the Wendigo Totem and like some points of Blood Pact to like get like additional vitality and bleeding damage as long as you are standing inside that totem as well. Now there are some items that I do want to mention though. First of all, it's gonna be the Praetorian 3-piece set, the chest, helmet, as well as the shoulder pads. which you can get at around level 50, right? This is a 3-piece blue epic set, which is not necessarily like that hard to get. It does drop rather frequently, and it is like very, very, very good defensively. So like if you can get your hands on this while leveling, and especially once you like get 2 out of 3 pieces, the 2-piece bonus is like 15% physical resistance. This is really, really good, right? Like once you got at least 2 pieces, try to wear those 2 pieces that you got. And if you got all 3 pieces, I mean, just like wear all 3. They're fine. They can like be basically used on any character. They're like a very, very like overall fine defensive set. It does actually also have some shield synergy, which, I mean, in the case of Conjurer and Cabalist at the very least, you're gonna be using as well, because, I mean, yeah, you wanna use the Vampiric Bone Wall anyway, so it does actually fit perfectly. For gloves, I wanna also mention Runic Bracers. Runic Bracers are always a very easy as well as very reliable like defensive choice for gloves as well. Really, really decent. I do use these on like many of my solo self-found characters. And then if you're using the Sigil of Consumption, right, if you're playing Conjurer or Cabalist as well, the Desecrator Threads boots are really nice as well. Also for the relic slot, you should try to like get one of the epic Vitality relics, such as for example the Torment relic. Torment relic, like many other epic relics, this one can actually be kind of target farmed, like the blueprint can be target farmed in the Steelcap District vendor, not the faction vendor, but the other one next to him. He basically like sells you blueprints, right? For relics, tier 1 and tier 2 blueprints, like common and epic ones. Basically like tier 1 and 2 relics, right? So you can just like do the vendor reset trick or like reset your session after checking him out and then like checking out the vendor again, and he will like sell you overall like basically all tier 1 and 2 relics that you cannot buy from the other like faction vendors, right? Also, if you're playing a Necromancer, you can also consider using the Mortality Relic. This one is a +1 all skills to Necromancer as well as Vitality damage relic, which also does have like a pretty decent proc, which like gives you even more vitality damage, right? This one you will get only from the faction master of Mammoth Resistance, right? So you do need to get like a little bit of faction reputation at least with this faction to like get this blueprint for this epic relic. Now when it comes to the devotions here, if you haven't pulled the points from the crossroads yet, you want to certainly at least put a one red node here. The blue and the green could actually stay for now, it's fine. And then you need to like put 1 point to the yellow. And then you want to get the Panther, the Lotus, as well as the Watcher. After completing these 3 devotions, you can retake the 1 point from the crossroads, and then you just need to take the Hawk, and then you can start working on Retosh. You can put Retosh on pretty much anything you want to, right? Ideally you want maybe like a Storm Totem by now as well to like proc this if you're playing a Shaman, or if you're playing the Cabalist, then you can also put this to Curse of Reality. Now you probably won't make it quite to Retosh yet in normal difficulty. You will probably have like around 40 to maybe like 45 devotion points. This setup would need like 48 devotion points, as you can see. You will, however, easily get like the remaining devotion points in Elite and Ultimate difficulty, right? Like in Elite, all the devotion shrines basically reset, right? And you will have even more to gain access to clans. And with all of those available, you will get easily to 55 devotions, probably like around level 75, 70-ish by the end of Elite, right? You will have 55 devotion points, 100%. So we can just actually like skip on over here to the higher difficulties and start talking about higher difficulties here by actually looking at the devotion screen, which is going to be like the same for all 3 builds anyway. So after you have completed the Retosh devotion, which you should be able to at the start of Elite basically, you can then retake the blue crossroad here, put 1 into the red crossroads as well as the Viper devotion, and then after you have those 2, you can take out the Jackal, and with these like 6 remaining points you can now get the Dying God as well, and you basically have your final devotion page. Alternatively, you could also still run what I was running back then on my solo self-found Conjurer on the playthrough, right, with the Scales of Karma instead of Revenant basically, and also like Scholar's Light instead of Hawk, and then like Eel instead of Satyr's Guide, and also like Lizard and Jackal instead of the Viper. However, this devotion page is a little bit outdated. The Scales of Karma have been nerfed a little bit compared to back then, and while this is still good and playable, and if you have energy problems, then this is still better because of the scales giving you like lots of more energy leech compared to Revenant. But if you don't need the energy, then just play this a little bit more modern setup, which will give you like a lot more offensive ability through Hawk and Viper. For gear, you want to keep the before mentioned MIs, especially those from the mountain deeps, so refarm them on high difficulties for high level versions and combine them with the armor, components and augments that cover your resistances and give you % vitality damage. Make sure to check out the faction quartermasters for faction armor as well as augments, which you can put on every single gear slot on top of components, so they help you out of a lot when it comes to fixing resistances for high difficulties. You will need a lot of resistances since you lose 25% resistances to the top row when moving from normal to elite, and another 25% resistances to the top and the bottom row, apart from stun rest, when moving from elite to ultimate. In ultimate difficulty, the game is also balanced around you having 80% resistances, and lots of enemies are able to shred resistances on top, so ideally you want to work towards having all res capped at 80% with at least 30% resistances over the cap to protect you against resistance reduction debuffs from enemies. Also, don't forget about the level 75 and level 94 versions of the Fetid Mask. The Fetid Mask is a 100% guaranteed drop from the Urn cluster next to the Corwin Sands Rift in Forgotten Gods. You will get a level 50 version normal, level 75 in elite and level 94 in ultimate. The level 50 version is rather mediocre, but the level 75 and level 94 versions have +1 to all of your skills, so they are very good as a filler helmet. When it comes to the faction quartermasters, don't forget to not only check out their armor, augments and rings that they can sell you, but also their blueprints. And in reared status, they can also sell you legendary blueprints for example the Venom Fire Amulet, which is very great for like any Ravenous Earth Cabalist or Ritualist. To speed up the reputation gain with these factions, make sure to also buy the faction Red at honored status, right? Like once you're honored with a faction, just go to their faction quartermaster like immediately and buy their faction Red. This will give you a 50% boost to all faction reputation gained from this point on. Alright, so let us continue to talk about the skill point allocation here. If you are playing a Conjurer, right, an Oculus Shaman, then you want to proceed as follows. You wanna get to Blood Pact as well as your Corrupted Storm Totem maybe. On the other hand, you also want Curse of Reality and Vulnerability. So next couple of levels, for example, could look like this, right? You could put like a 1 pointer here and then like basically max out your vulnerability, and also you can like put 1 point here into Solar's Witchfire and 1 point to second right. This becomes better the more like generic +1 all skills you have, especially to the occultist side of the treatment. Also, once you have Chaos or Fire to Vitality conversion, or also Elemental to Vitality conversion, then you want to also max out your Destruction part of the sigil to, well, basically give you even more damage on the sigils. On top of that, especially once you have the Dark One set, you could also max out the Bloody Pox ability again. We kind of like spec out of this a bit, right? And you also don't want to use Fevered Rage anymore in ultimate difficulty. Like in Elite, you can like still use it sometimes, but at the very least, once you're in ultimate, you don't want to use this anymore. Unless you're playing like a Retaliation super tank, then you can like still play around this. But you're not, I mean, a Vitality caster is very tanky, but it's not like a super tank, and you don't like really benefit of getting hit that much. So yeah, you don't really want to play this anymore, and you rather want to like put some points back to Bloody Pox. More important than putting the points back to Bloody Pox though, like what I would do before that, is to put more points into the Shaman tree, right? And then like max out a Vinegar Totem and also like put a couple of points on Blood Pact and maybe even max out the Blood Pact. Alternatively, you could just like 1 point this and like put a couple of points here, and instead like max out a Storm Totem and like use the Corrupted Storm to convert the like Lightning Totem to a Vitality Totem. This is why you kind of want to like get to 40 points first here, right? Like before you get to 40 points here, you don't have to like touch these totems at all. But like once you get to 40 points, you can like max out the Storm Totem, like put it to Vitality, right? And I mean, the Vinegar Totem alone, like without any support from gear, is, I would say, in a build like this, not even that great. However, once you have the Dark One set, for example, that like supports this very well, like giving you 2 totems, then you can like certainly max this out for healing and like the buff for Blood Pact as well. Also, what you want to get as well is to like soft cap Hardened Wild, right? You want this to be at 10 points here as well. You can already see that we're like running out of points here, out of skill points, so like the remaining skill points will have to come from gear. With an endgame setup with, for example, the Dark One set, could look like this, right? You have your Vulnerability and Curse of Reality, like 1 point here, right, or like some points here, depending on like how much duration radius you would like to have on this. Then you soft cap your Vulnerability, you have your Bloody Pox and Wasting maxed out, the Sigil maxed out, Destruction actually not maxed out here, because apparently I didn't have like that much conversion here, but I would probably like generally advise you to put more points here, Got the 1 pointers here, right? 1 point here, and so on and so on, right? In Shaman we have the Totem maxed out, the Blood Pact. Actually no Storm Totem here because like once you have Dark one, you can still play the Totem though, honestly, like it's not that bad. Also this rather older version was also still like using Savagery. You can still use Savagery if you like want even more offensive ability. However, if you play the new, like more modern devotions that I just showed you, right, where you have like away from Hawk and Viper instead, then you don't even need this anymore. Also back then, Tenacity of the board used to give you both OA as well as DA. The DA is now on Oakskin, right? The DA from Oakskin used to be on Tenacity of the board, that's why you have like this soft cap or even like maxed out here. So what you can do now is you can like drop the Savagery, max out the Oakskin, and like you have more points to, for example, put into your Totem, right? To like have the Totem here on top. Also, whenever you feel like you just want like some more raw stats, right, you can like just always put some more points down here, but you really don't need more than 40 points in Shaman. Like these last couple of points are very flexible here. Now if we move over to the Cabalist, right, then the occultist side of things at level 60 looked like this, right, and we were about to max out our vulnerability here yet again. So the same thing as on the Conjurer, right, you max this out, you max out destruction if you, well, have some more spare points, right, and you have conversion rather. You can also like start to get putting points into wasting again, right? We didn't use this at all actually on a Cabalist until now, but wasting is still pretty nice for like flat vitality damage and minus away shred on enemies, right? Pretty nice ability. And in the Necromancer tree we got the Spectral Wrath maxed out, right? Call of the Grave is only 1 pointed right now. We don't really have any points here. You want to push the Necromancer tree further, get like a 1 pointer in Fire Eruption, get 6 points to Mark of Torment, and then you want to max out the Spectral Binding for like offensive ability as well as HP. The percent Aether damage doesn't really matter, but I mean it's not really bad to have either. And then you want to either get Siphon Souls, right? 12 points here and like 12 points of Blood Boil, just to have like another away shred and like healing ability for yourself. You can either do that, or you can also like use Bone Harvest, like 1 point this, 1 point this, and then like max out the Soul Harvest to just like gain more percent vitality damage as well as like flat vitality damage. However, it's not really as good on a caster as it would be like on a weapon damage based character. So what I also like to do nowadays is actually to just like max out Call of the Grave, because Call of the Grave, especially when you're using these like Necromancer amulets, this gives you like more duration, then this is actually another very nice damage like steroid, which you can use for, well, percent vitality damage and crit damage and so on, right? And also it's still like a heal whenever you press it with the amulet. The remaining 15 points can be put also in Curse of Reality, some more like for like more movement speed, slow, as well as duration and radius, or you could like just also max out the baseline of Bloody Pox again. I would probably not do this before getting the Dark One set. Like once you have the Dark One set, this is gonna be a lot better. What you can also do is like 1 point these two, right, like with the skill points. You get some more like percent vitality damage here, some vitality resistance here, and it's like not too bad. It's not worth putting more than 1 point into this passive though, like it's not really that great for a caster. Now for the skill points on a Ritualist, right, this is where we left off. With the Roaring Swarm, we maxed out the Oakskin, we got to 40 points here in the Shaman tree, so now we can start using the totems, right? Storm Totem and or Wendigo Totem. I would, while leveling, rather start off the Storm Totem, like convert it to Vitality, right? Get to the 40 points in Shaman first, right? Then get the Totem, convert it to Corrupted Storm, to like Vitality Totem. And then later on, once you have like supportive gear for Wendigo Totem, at the very last, once you have the Dark One set, you want also like max out the Wendigo Totem and the Blood Pact. Also, don't forget to soft cap Heart of the Wild, right? Put this to 10 points. Don't overcap it though, it's not really worth it to overcap it. And then again in Necromancer, right, what you want to do is max out Spectral Binding and max out the Call of the Grave. And also get 6 points to Mark of Torment. That's like the sweet spot. If you have some more like points to spare, and or if you like this ability a lot, right, you can also use Siphon Souls and Blood Boil. But it is by no means like mandatory. It's, I would say, a nice addition to have on top, but it's not like mandatory at all. Again, you're also gonna get like more pluses to all your skills here from gear ideally, so you won't be quite as point starved as this might look like right now. Now for endgame gearing, I won't go over like every single legendary in the game, because like most of those are random drops anyway, and you're generally good to go with like the green monster Infrequents from the Mountain Deeps, as well as a couple of faction legendaries that you can get, as well as a couple of faction blues or greens. The items that I want to focus on here are the Targetfarmable sets, and the most important one for that is the Dark One set. The Dark One set is a target farmable 4-piece legendary set, which you will get from the dungeon before the local boss. So it is slightly hidden on the map, like you need to do the local questline to actually access this dungeon. However, once you got there, it's actually not that hard to farm. Like I would say it's, when it comes to time investment, it is easier to get than the Krieg set, for example, which is the like go-to set for beginner Death Knights, Spellbinders and Battle Mages. If you don't know how to access the local dungeon, please check out my video guide on the 6 Celestial bosses from Grim Dawn, and then like watch the part where I'm talking about access to the local boss. Once you are inside the dungeon, make sure to always pop a Hoarfrost ointment if you don't have like very good freeze rest, so like 65% or higher freeze rest is like what you need at the very least here. If you don't have that on your character, make sure to always use a Hoarfrost ointment before like going in here, because otherwise you might just die to the icy traps. Also make sure to farm all 4 Riftclaimed Aterians. Like every single Riftclaimed Aterian in here can drop one of the 4 pieces. It's not like you can only farm one of the 4 to like farm all pieces. Every single one has like only 1 piece attached to them. So like once you got a specific piece, you could potentially like skip the one Aterian of which you got the piece from. But I mean, if it's like the first or second or third guy, then it's probably better to like just rerun them anyway, to get like a better chance of maybe like also getting some better rolls on your items. But for sure, like the last guy, right, the guy that drops the shoulders, like once you have the shoulders, you can, for example, like shorten your run by not running the last Aterian anymore. Now, apart from the Dark One set and all the other, like before already mentioned, green monster frequents that you could farm for endgame, you can also farm 2 bosses from the 3 Seas of Morganath questline to like enable the Morganath dungeon, right? The first one is the Guardian of the First Seal, actually, the Maggot, right? This one, like Gurblix the Digested, I think he's called. And yeah, he has a chance to drop the mythical string of maggots. It's not like that high of a chance to like drop this, but if you get it, it's like really good, especially for Vitality Necromancers, right? This one gives you like +1 Outcast to Necromancer, +3 Wasting, +3 Devouring Swarm, +3 Possession. So like it's very good for either a Cabalist or a Ritualist. And then also we got the Halanx's Head. This one is very nice as well, because again it is target farmable from the, in this case, 3rd boss for the 3rd seer, right? Halanx, the guy in Howling Depths. And this offhand has +1 to Occultist, +1 to Shaman, +3 to Spectral Binding, so it's very nice as well, again, for pretty much any Vitality caster. If you're playing around the sigils, however, I would say that the shield, right, the Vampiric Bone Wall is still better than this, so you kind of, in the end, only play this on a Ritualist, probably. But on the Ritualist, it's for sure like a very nice offhand to use, and if you're playing a Ritualist and you don't have like a good offhand yet, you can like certainly take your time to like farm this offhand, because in the very end game you don't really want to play around like dual bone spikes and the blade sworn talisman anymore. You do want to use another relic, like the relic slot is a very important slot for endgame. So yeah, you do want to give up like that 2nd bone spike, at least at the very end game. Also, another target farmable endgame unique item is the green belt, or rather the 2 green belts from Lunar Valgoth. She has one with Chaos to Vitality conversion +1 Necromancer, and one with Elemental to Vitality conversion with +1 to Occultist. Now the conversion on the Dark One set, the Chaos to Vit conversion on the Dark One set, is really nice, especially if you're playing around the sigils from the Occultist tree. Because the second part of the sigil, right, the destruction part, actually has fire and chaos damage. Now, while you do convert most of the Chaos to Vitality already, with the Dark One set, how do you convert the Elemental to Vitality? Well, there's really only the Lunar Valgoth girdle easily accessible for you, so you can certainly start farming that one. And if you get the other belt, right, and you're playing either a Cabalist or Ritualist, you can also use the other like +1 Necromancer belt very nicely as a substitute for a string of maggots. For more Elemental to Vitality conversion, helping you out with the destruction's damage, you can also use Blugrook's Plagued Edge, the Corruption of Gargabol, the Decree of Mammoth, or the rather harder to get unique items from the Morganath dungeon, like Ring of Basti, as well as the Nightbringer. Now all of these items are actually not random drops and are target farmable, some of them very easy like the Blugrook's Plagued Edge, some of them rather ridiculously hard like the Ring of Basti or the Nightbringer. Now of course there are more random drop legendaries to look out for, like for example the Skull of Gulamaj, Wallwalker's Footpads, etc. But going over all of these and discussing all the pros and cons of every single one here would make this video way too long. So instead, please check out the links to the endgame builds and guides in the description of this video. And with this you have arrived at the end of my video. Thank you so much everybody for watching. Thank you so much for your support as well on Patreon, on YouTube, on Twitch. I appreciate every single bit of support a lot, because, well, otherwise this channel would not exist at all. And yeah, I hope to see you around on the next video. Take care, and hope you're gonna enjoy your time with the Dark One Vitality Caster.